Even if you don't like model trains, anyone can appreciate a nice train table. Train tables are an American classic. I have very fond memories of my grandpa's train table, as well as the one my dad eventually built when I was growing up. They're even prevalent in media, like shows such as The Sopranos and Young Sheldon all show off a love for toy trains. I've been to dozens of train stores across the United States, and I am always captivated by the display layouts they feature. I am currently in the process of opening my own train store, and what better way to preserve the magic of trains than to build my own display table? And to do this, what better way to start than with Facebook Marketplace, an icon of this channel? See, lots of people dump trains on the marketplace, and especially train tables. The only problem is they're usually huge. My store that I'm opening is inside of an antique mall, so space is somewhat limited. Thus, I wasn't able to buy a pre-built table, which means I need to make my own. Sort of. I found an abundance of these generic toy tables for sale, and after looking up the dimensions of them online, they definitely have enough space to at least fit an oval of tubular track on them. Coincidentally, I was buying this train set, and the gentleman had one of these tables he wanted to get rid of. So I made the 45-minute drive and scooped up not only a train set, but also the table for only $55. After loading it back up, I got home and got to work. All right, so we're out on my balcony. We've got the tabletop out here. Got some leftover sandpaper and some leftover paint from my last train table. And all I'm gonna do is just give this a quick rough sand and get the paint on there. Let's see what it's gonna look like. So first coat is done. I don't know how many more I'm going to do because I'll eventually put artificial turf on top of this. So far, it doesn't look terrible. I don't really mind the green that's showing through since, again, this is going to have grass on top of it. All right, so the second coat is almost dry. I'm going to go ahead and start putting on our turf. I'm going to do this process a little bit differently than I did last time. When I did this for my own layout, I used a mix of these two turfs right here. What I did was I put them down and then I sprayed them with some sort of spray glue. However, it definitely wasn't strong enough, so I'm switching it up this time. I'm going to try this Elmer spray. I'm going to spray the table first, then put on the grass and stuff, then give it a really nice spray after and use an accelerator, and hopefully that'll be a little bit better. So after 2 coats of brown paint and then a bit of this artificial grass, I would say that the board is looking pretty solid. What we're going to do now is we're going to get this back onto the table and we're going to start mocking up some track to see if I can make 031 work on it, or to see if I'm going to have to use 027 instead. When I was first designing this layout, I really wanted to use fast track. The only issue with fast track is that it has about this extra 1.5 inch overhang, which unfortunately would hit these barriers on my table, because this table is like roughly 32-ish inches deep. I've got some Menards 030, 031-ish. We're going to mock it up and see if a train can run on it. You can see that whenever I put it on, there's not a lot of room on the edge. I'm afraid that a train may hang out a little bit as it turns and may run into this. I'm going to set up a temporary loop and run a train on it and see how it does. The overhang from the front is already hitting the wall. Yeah, and it already became derailed. Okay, well that pretty much confirms it. So we've got some 27-inch diameter track on the table now, and this already looks a lot better. I'm kind of curious if my Train Master can run on this. Just barely. Wow. This probably will have the most overhang out of anything that could even run on here. The fact that it's even able to run on this tells me that this 27-inch will be perfectly fine. Next thing we're going to tackle is our electronics, which I'm going to talk about briefly now. I know a lot of people can be pretty intimidated by electrical nuances when building a layout. How do I wire switches? How do I wire my accessories? How does any of this work? This is going to be a very, very, very basic, hey, put this wire here, put a different wire there. This is a very basic diagram that I'm using for my layout. It's my power source, which in this case is going to be my transformer. I'm using a modern CW80. So this is one of the ones made after like 2020, 2021 that has like better circuit protection. One of the reasons why I'm doing it is because mine has two options. It has your track variable voltage, which is controlled by this lever. It goes from like 0 to 18 volts. It also has the accessory, which is fixed. This voltage doesn't change. Because I'm making my layout to be a display layout, I have some extra things on here that you may not need to have. When I'm first looking at wiring the power to my tracks, which is that symbol right up here, you'll notice I have this weird top hat and a T right here. When you press this button, it briefly completes the circuit and engages this time relay, which will allow power to run to the track for 60 seconds, and then this relay will disengage. I'm doing this so that people can come up to my layout, press the button, and it'll operate. This is switch 2 and switch 3. Switch 2 and switch 3 are just these little Dorman 86306 switches that I found at O'Reilly's. Just to show you a quick understanding of how this switch works, I have a multimeter hooked up to it right now. This omega symbol represents an ohm, which is how we measure resistance. And in the current spot that my switch is in, you can see it's half an ohm, which is very little resistance. If you were to think of this like a bridge, right now the bridge is open and current, kind of like a car, can drive across the bridge and go to the other side. Now, if we were to stick to this bridge analogy, whenever I move this switch up, it's kind of like I'm closing the bridge for the day, and cars, kind of like current, can no longer pass. And as you see, it goes to OL, which stands for overload, which means that current is no longer able to pass through. So to control our switches and our buttons, I want to put a piece of wood in front of here and drill out a hole for our push button and our two levers we're going to have. So I went to a thrift store and found this piece of angle iron for $1. What I'm thinking is we're going to screw it right here because this fits perfectly. We'll screw it in here so that way the holes are symmetrical. And then I've got this leftover piece of wood from my last train table, and we'll be able to have the control panel right here. I'm going to go head out to my patio and drill this out. I'll see you guys in a few seconds. We're back. I went ahead and got all of our holes drilled. Now all that's left to do is to mount our bracket. In order to do that, we're just going to measure this. This guy is 6 inches long, doubt, and that's just about 8.5. So that means we need 1.25 inches on either side. This is just to help us. Here we go. Looks pretty even. Let's go ahead and drill it in. Well, the wood cracked, but it's because we were screwing too much freedom into it. You'll notice that the switch doesn't go in all the way. I didn't actually have a big enough drill bit. So what I'll end up doing is I'll probably just like silicone this. So it's been a few days off camera, but I got the time delay and the button over here wired up. Let me show you guys. There's this rectifier right here, which gives me 12 volt DC, which goes to a relay. And you'll notice it says poop. I actually don't know why it says poop, but it also says 30. So essentially, whenever the contact is closed with our button on our control panel, this will stay engaged for 30 seconds, allowing power from our transformer to go to the track and let the train move. What better way to show this off than to test it out with this amazing, super high quality 040. So the 04 is on the track. Let's press our button and see if it works. Well, a bit too much power on the transformer. Let's turn it down just a little bit. Okay, we turned it down. Let's try it again. So now, much slower though, you can see the train is running. And as it's going, the timer right there is counting down. And once that hits 0, the train will stop. And 2, 1, and just like that, the train stops. So our next big thing that I want to tackle is I want to go ahead and get these two accessories wired in. To do that, we're just going to follow the wiring diagram that I showed you earlier in the video, and there's no point to show me doing this process. It's just going to be me drilling holes in here and getting wire fed to these two. Now, I want to make a slight change to this layout. I was rummaging through some of the buildings that I have, and I came across this shed right here. And don't worry, I have the roof. What I was thinking is I can put a manual turnout right here, so that way I can like store a locomotive in this shed, and that way it'll just bring a little bit more presence to our layout. It's a perfect MPC style piece that I think would look really nice. So I'm gonna go grab a turnout and we'll see how it looks. Here's how the layout's looking with the shed. It's got its roof on it and with this switch right here. I will say I'm a little concerned that it may derail, but luckily I'm going to screw in all of the track. This will be screwed in, and hopefully we won't have that issue. It was sparking a little bit, but I cleaned it up, and here's how it runs now. You see, it goes over it pretty well, especially when it's running this direction. So that's good enough for me. Off camera, I'm going to go ahead and clean up this guy because he's super dirty. And I'm going to cut to us having these fully wired. Well, it took a bit of work, but I want to say that our display layout is finally done, at least for now. Let's take a quick tour. So this shed, I literally gave it a bath. I took it into my bathtub and scrubbed it off, and it's looking great. Now this will be really nice. I can store rolling stock in here. I can also put some insulating pins and like store a locomotive in here. And it'll be really neat. I really think it adds a cool flair to the layout. On this side, we've got some nice scenery. We've got this little pond that I found, and let me just remind you, all of the scenery is just random stuff I've amassed through buying tons of collections. You can even take a little sneak peek inside. I like how some dust is still left on the windowsills. It makes it look kind of realistic. We've got this nice station for the folks of our little city to wait at. You guys should comment down below what we should name this little train table village. And we've got this ridiculously large street lamp for that so they can see at night. And of course, paying homage to one of the channel favorites, we've got a telephone pole, rounded out by our oil derrick, as well as our gate man, which both are fully operational on our switchboard. As you can see, that moves our switchman, and this operates our oil derrick, which sometimes gets stuck, so I may have to do a little bit of work on it. We can always do that in another time. I think the last thing we've got to do is put this to the test. Thank y'all for watching. I'll keep you updated on when we open up the train store. That way you can come check out the layout in person. But other than that, we've been going live every Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific time on the channel. Make sure to also check out our description where we've got our eBay. We've got a ton of 99-cent auctions for y'all to check out. Maybe get some cheap trains. And other than that, I'll see y'all in the next one.